All right. Good morning, my fellow curb nerds. Really excited to have you guys here today. I think we've got an important and exciting topic, obviously, congestion in the curve, tech to manage traffic. So a great group of curb enthusiasts here. So to my left, your right, Jordan Justus of Automotus, Tom Cooper of NoTraffic, Ali Hasan of AWS, and Kyle Othmer from Miovision. So let's get started, guys. I think why don't we just start with the big picture, sort of like what are the challenges facing cities and operators on the curb today? Kind of like start at the 10,000 foot view. Where are we? What's the problem? What are people doing? So starting at the very end, Kyle.
Thank you, sir. So some of the biggest problems that I've foreseen in some of our cities that we've been working closely with as Miovision, most predominantly is aging infrastructure. Aging infrastructure across multiple feeds. So at the intersection, at the mid-block, at the LED, that's the most common issue I'm seeing, and the cost to continuously maintain that infrastructure. The second point to that is once a city actually acquires the funding and is ready to deploy new systems, I'm seeing the time to deploy is extensively long. So yeah, I would say those are the two main issues I would point out.
I actually have no idea.
Honesty is appreciated.
Yeah, no. So I mean, as at AWS, right, our role is to basically enable partners that focus on understanding the curb. What I feel is I think the most important thing is trying to understand what is the issue of the curb, right? And the only way you can do that is by collecting some sort of information from the curb, like data and stuff. And I think that's what these guys are experts at doing. So I think the first step is just find efficient ways to collect the data, understand the data, gain insights, and then you understand, all right, these are the problems my curb is having, and then you're in a position to create solutions and offerings for the cities to say, this is how you challenge it. So yeah, specific problems, I don't know, but I think a key role is just leveraging the data to do that.
And we'll get to questions about collaboration so you don't feel too left out. But Tom, what do you think? Kind of big picture.
Yeah, I think that the big issue is you have many issues, not just curbside. We have to look at from curb to curb and roadway because you have challenges with obviously parking inventory, things loading zone management, timing and incentive timing for parking. Then you have needs from, let's say, traffic operations to optimize traffic flow to deal with those situations. Then you have other stakeholders in the agencies like police departments and risk managers who want insights about what's happening. Then you've got the general public who have to use this infrastructure that's not been optimized, and particularly focusing on safety issues. So it's a whole spectrum, and I think we should start looking at these problems more holistically than getting single vertical solutions that are really siloed from each other.
Jordan, thoughts?
Well, I agree with all of my other fellow panelists here, but one thing that we've certainly seen as well in cities, I know we have a lot of experts here in the audience who have a lot more insight than myself, but one thing that we've seen really is just a change in both the types of users at the curbs and then in accordance with that, their behaviors. If you look back, 20 years ago, everybody who was using the curb was largely passenger vehicles, but with the growth of e-commerce, with the growth of on-demand delivery, we've seen a lot more short-term uses that have led to increased double parking and in turn congestion, emissions, safety hazards. And so there's a lot of new challenges that cities are facing today. And to Ali's point, there is a data gap as well in understanding what's actually happening on the ground. But then in terms of operationalizing it as well, it's important to make sure that we have the systems that align with that type of behavior. But overall, I think it's a changing landscape and a lot of new dynamics that we haven't necessarily seen before.
So you said the D word there, and I think that's an important one to pick up. So data, privacy, sort of collecting all that. So why don't we talk about from Miovision's perspective, what sort of data do you collect, and how do you make sure that's non-invasive, respecting people's privacy and rights? Like kind of how do you walk both sides of the line?
Yeah, no, great question. So Miovision collects video-based data. So we use object-based analytics to observe a vehicle versus a truck, versus a pedestrian, versus a bicyclist, versus a scooter. So we can actually nail down exact classifications. One of the things that has been quite successful and has worked well with cities is is pushing the city to challenge the vendor on an accuracy standard for that data set, right? So Miovision specifically, City of Toronto is a great example, pushed back up Miovision to say 98% accuracy is our threshold, and that's what we need to, that is the objective that we need to hit. It allows for collaboration amongst the vendor and the city. It allows them to have a closer working relationship and actually nail down those accuracy standards is something that was very, very huge, as well as the ability to classify specific cars versus multimodal.
I guess I'm thinking I can imagine a scenario where a curb management system goes up and a concerned citizen says, like, what are you doing with that data? So Tom, how do you guys prepare for that inevitable question?
Yeah, I think the way to prepare that is using now new technologies and methodologies. So things about classifying very specific objects but anonymizing that. So we start out on the topic of data, but we keep hearing the resonant theme is give us insights, because even though you've got now consolidated systems that can give you information about the parking inventory, overstaying in loading zones, double parking, that's one set. Then you've got the traditional traffic data, but agencies need to be able to get information to derive insights to actually do something actionable. So we're not just adding to the existing massive warehouses of data that already exist, give us insights. We keep hearing this over and over again. Unfortunately now, we've got tools to do that.
I just wanted to add, I think there's also a misconception when people see or hear, a camera, then the assumption is data is being collected, stored somewhere, sitting there forever, right? Might be the case in some cases, but a lot of times edge computing, like real-time processing of the edge, sort of avoids that. You collect an image, like these guys, process the information you need, anonymize everything else, right? Discard that image right there. In most cases, just take that telemetry data, license plate recognition, or something like that, the information, send that information to the backend application, and that data is gone. So I think there's also a misconception that if an image was taken, it's there forever. Might not be the case always.
If I can add to that point too, is so I think we have to work with agencies and their policies, because there might be a reason they actually want the visual contextual data. So fortunately too, with these platforms, we can provide that if they actually want that. But if there's a PII sensitivity, everything that we do can be metadata driven. So great point.
I think there might be some work then for us as an industry to sort of evangelize that truth, in the sense that the public sees a camera, they're going to think I'm being watched, but if the data is really just a moment in time and then being anonymized, Joe Public might not know that yet. And so I think the other kind of interesting, hot topic is sort of monetization. So, cities underpricing the curb, throwing away revenue, and getting more congestion because of that, not yet solved problem. So Jordan, this is somewhere where you really, Automotus can talk to. Tell us, how do you monetize the curb and what do you do with that money?
Well, it's not our money. But just going back 1 second too, and I think it parallels quite a bit with the monetization piece, is there's a lot of education and nuance required to tackle some of these challenges, all of you know, because these are complex issues and a lot of new technologies are fine. And there was actually a great panel yesterday around how technologies can solve problems, but without community engagement, without policies, you're really not able to get to the core of what the true issue is and really provide solutions that affect your community in a positive way. And so across the board, what we've seen on the privacy side is really being able to educate your constituents, putting up signs around what data is being collected, what's not being collected, and then implementing policies at a citywide or countywide level to reflect that so that you have standard processes in place to enable that type of technology, which is something that we've seen in a number of markets. And it's similar on the monetization piece where there's a lot of noise around monetizing the curb, grabbing more revenue, but at the end of the day, that's not really what it's about in most cases. The problem is it's a supply and demand issue, right? You have demand for the curb, you price it to affect demand because you have limited supply. And now today with the influx of commercial vehicles, most of them aren't paying in compliant manners. They're not registering for permits, they're certainly not putting money in meters or paying on apps. And so by helping those companies pay for access to the curb, you can generate net new revenue, but more importantly, you can reduce their double parking, you can reduce the amount of time they spend circling the block, creating additional congestion. And so it's not monetization for monetization's sake as much as it is monetization for helping control the influx of demand that's really not been accounted for in existing systems.
Economics 101. I think another important thing is as we build this ecosystem, collaboration. So you can't put up a bunch of systems and then have them not talk to each other. So maybe this is somewhere where AWS can kind of come into the fray. So how do you guys foresee like a successful collaboration in this space?
I think there's multiple ways, right? There's collaboration between companies, right? Like all these guys, one of the things we try to do at AWS is bring together an ecosystem of partners and have them sort of under the same umbrella, communicating with each other so that basically they're building these partnerships with each other and they're sharing data securely, anonymously, for the benefit of the city or the end consumer. So actually we're launching something we call a Smart City Competency Program, which is one of our partner programs to create this umbrella of partners in that space. So that's from the business perspective. I think from a data perspective, I think there needs to be some sort of standards, right, for data sharing, open standards, open source, where all the data, or some of the data, can be shared across the board, and cities have control of that, who own the assets on the curbs, right? They can say, all right, I want this provider to interconnect with this provider, and I want this insight across the board. So I think there needs to be some sort of standard, and I think there are agencies. I was talking to, I forget who, someone yesterday who said there's like a curbside open source.
The Open Mobility Foundation.
There you go, thank you, Open Mobility Foundation. So there are some of these initiatives already taking place. So I think that's going to be critical. On a larger smart city perspective, there's also an organization, Fiware, F-I-W-A-R-E, Europe-based. So they've created a standards-based organization. We're interfacing with them to say, how do you create an open source standard-based architecture for a city, right? And cities can adapt that, and mobility is part of that, waste management, recycle, everything's part of that. So I think that data sharing and standards would be a key for me.
Kyle, looks like you have a thought.
No thought on my end. I think that was very well executed answer, my friend. Yeah.
Well, how about this before we get to you, Tom? Like, we've got 4 vendors on the stage. Do you guys all play nice with each other? Could I set up a system that uses all 4 of you? That's. I want some sparks, but all right, I'll take it.
I mean, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, it's just about solving city problems, right? And every technology has its own application, so just finding that mesh. But having an ability to share that data and bring it all under one roof so that you can really get a better understanding comprehensively makes a big difference.
Jonah, so I want to talk on the collaboration topic. So I think we're looking at, and we're at a Smart City Conference, we're looking at innovations delivered by technology. But we have innovations now that I can tell you how long a vehicle, what type of vehicle is sitting in a parking spot, who's double stopped, how that's impacting traffic flow, how that's impacting safety, systems that can extend walk time for a disabled pedestrian. That's all well and good, but the bigger issue is, from a process standpoint, a procurement standpoint, agencies are still set up with a construct of doing very siloed things. Traffic does this, parking does this, police department does this, the streets maintenance department does this. We've got these vertical systems with these locked-in warehouses of information that really don't support this planning, and also the functional aspects of this. So I think the rest of the world's kind of figured this out. If you look at some of the large smart city initiatives in Western Europe and Southeast Asia, they'll commingle funds and they'll have actually smart city platforms delivered. Or I'm not saying we're paying this concept lip service here, but we're still doing the same sort of thing. Verticalized systems, verticalized technology, and now that we have the magic of the cloud, we can start doing a lot of more integrated solutions, and it's much higher value for the agencies and also we the people that fund these systems. So,
I think that's a common theme we've heard from a lot of our public sector friends is trouble breaking out of silos, and sometimes it takes sort of an outside actor to help kind of push that change across.
Yeah, I think one thing I was going to add is at AWS, there's certain leadership principles and process we follow, and a lot of partners as well. And the key is working backwards from the customer, right? Let's focus on, let's not talk technology, let's not talk anything. Let's focus on the customer, understand what challenge are they having, and then figure out how we work backwards from that and apply the right solutions. And I think a lot of our partners share that same vision as well. So I think the collaboration comes if the cities start demanding it and saying, this is what I want solved, you guys figure out a way to make it happen. Right, and that's where I think everyone's open and willing. Like Jordan said, the end goal is to solve their challenges, whatever it takes to make that happen.
I think that's a great point, because on one hand, the customer is the city, but on another way of looking at it, the ultimate customer is the citizen, right? The the taxpayer, the person using the service. And so I think starting any of these projects with community engagement and starting at the very base level, what does the community need, is a kind of the only way you can get these to succeed and have buy-in. So how does Miovision, for example, start at the very beginning and get community buy-in and build a project that people want to see happen in their community?
That's a great question. So I go back again to the aging infrastructure issue, right? A lot of city engineers specifically are getting pressures on connected vehicle, connect your vehicles, buy RSUs, deploy autonomous shuttles, do an array of different things that are high tech, but they don't have basic communications at 60% of their network, or they're continuously repairing fiber optic. Or their legacy controllers and systems are old, right? A great example is a city in the Northeast that has goals to upgrade 100 of their intersections, cabinets, lights, LEDs, you name it. And I asked the lead, how long does it take you to deploy one of those intersections? Well, it takes close to a month for us to build the cabinet and deploy the system. So fast forward, in 10 years from now, you'll have 100 systems deployed in your network. And at year 5, all of those systems will now be legacy technology and not needed anymore, right? So in starting at the baseline requirements with cities, we always lean, do you have communications? Is there a plan to have high-resolution controllers? Are your LEDs capable of installing mid-block video systems to do curbside utilization? And that's where we start, and we've been quite successful in multiple areas with that approach.
Tom, how do you get community buy-in?
So I'd like to answer, give some color to that specific point of future-proofing what you have. Because traditionally, legacy technology, and those of you who have a chance, take a look inside of a traffic cabinet. You'll see a box that's the master controller, a box for this feature, a box for that feature, a box for that feature. It's been a very, very hardware-centric space. So now that we've got the power of artificial intelligence, edge processing, cloud compute, we can go to signals that are 40 years old, sprinkle some technology on them, and they're future-proof from now till the foreseeable future with the cloud compute capabilities and the real powerful compute process at the edge. As far as community buy-in, you have to be in partnership with the agencies. So most traffic operations agencies really care about what they're doing. They're involved with the community. For example, if you're putting in a new signal, usually a community outreach with city council and local constituents. If there's going to be a major highway interchange put in, the DOTs are very good with engagement. So you have to be partners with them, but you also have to help them understand the problem and give them insight so they can really articulate what's going to be the benefit to this. How am I going to benefit from having to bypass this roadway for a year and a half? How is it going to change my life? And fortunately now we've got the technologies where we can extrapolate that and give agencies insights to share that so they can see the benefit. It's really just sharing what the value proposition is, what it means to me, the average person. If you do that, then life becomes much easier. I'm not going to say the mayor's offices still don't get complaints, that they do. I waited there for 5 minutes and the light didn't change green. That's the typical answer, but now you have ways of addressing that.
So Jordan, I think your guys' technology, in a sense, requires curb users to shift their behavior a little bit. So how do you inform them that this change is coming and get them to understand that and opt in a way?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just following up on the community engagement piece too. I mean, what we've found, and it was a learning process, but all of our partner agencies, partner cities, they know their community is far better than we do. And it's really just about listening and then trying to get in front of the right people and listening to them. Because I forget who said it earlier, maybe it was you, Jonah, around, yes, we're working with cities, but at the end of the day, the end customer is the citizen. And so the better that we can understand their problems, the more we can provide a solution that really is valuable for everybody. And so for us, it's about getting in front of the right people and using our ears more than our mouths and understanding what their core challenges are and getting to the root of it. And then to your point, around trying to change behavior, it's a process. Usually what we found is it's best to meet them where they are. And so whatever their current systems are, whatever they're currently using, try to better understand what the challenges are, what's working for them, and then working with both, in our case, individual drivers or fleets to more or less just notify them of the systems that we have going on, bringing in partners like Amazon or AWS so that they can help share some of the findings that they've found around how it's beneficial for fleets or small businesses, but really listening more than talking and then sharing some of the case studies that have been helpful historically.
Just a couple of points that do some helpful hints. If you have a 311 service, if you have some major improvements or changes to parking or roadways, let the 311 center know you've got changes coming, so when the calls come in, really helpful thing. Another helpful hint for better living is use dynamic message signs to say something is different. Because we've done many, many projects where we've optimized corridors or grids, and the cities tell us they get calls that say, something's different. What did you do? Well, what's going on? It takes me 10 less minutes to get to work. Okay, that's a good thing. Well, I just didn't know it would happen. So let motorists know about that, and eventually that becomes just part of the invisible process of now I get to work sooner. Then they're really happy and they thank the mayors and the traffic operations groups.
Imagine that, thanking the mayor. But I think the key word there is communication, both in the internal sense, making sure different departments know what's happening, and externally, so that your actual average citizen understands that changes are coming and they're not caught off guard. Jordan said case studies, which I think is also an important thing to touch on. So why don't we sort of put on our sort of research hat here and think about examples anywhere in the country that you've seen of a good project, a success story, something you can share and learn from. So Kyle, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'll think of my hometown, the region of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. I am Canadian. In the hometown, we have an LRT, right? Light rail transit system running through basically 3 towns. And we are getting a ton of conflicts at the curb with the mid-block crosser, right? So a pedestrian would cross prior to the intersection and cross over dangerous LRT tracks, right? Where he shouldn't be crossing. And our ability to actually capture in real time the person in which time-stamped, accurately counted when he crossed that roadway has allowed the city to now develop standards and new designs on the LRT track to avoid this occurrence again, right? So that's a great example of how video object tracking can allow for a safer environment for the citizen.
Tom?
I'll talk about a case study specifically with one of our major installations is with the city of Phoenix. They've had more fatalities, pedestrian and bicyclist fatalities, in the past 2 months than the previous 2 years. This is a problem all across the U.S. We're seeing this everywhere. So we were able to use this high-resolution object tracking to give them insights into what can I possibly do to mitigate these conditions. So this is not currently, it's not a landed issue in the U.S. or even worldwide with what is the optimal yellow-red clearance interval to provide timings for more safe operations. So by using this very high resolution data, like Kyle was talking about that we've got in our platforms, but also doing things like time stamping the green and actually having captures of what happened, all the metadata, it gives them insights into, I can make this safer. Because we have to keep safety completely imbued in everything that we're doing, because we have the tools now to gain the insights, but also create operational improvements for traffic flow, if it's obstructed by LRT or bus rapid transit or parking, you can have insights and you can put mitigations in place that make real differences, and we have to stop injuring and killing people because we don't have this technology.
Jordan, any interesting case studies?
Yeah, we've got a few. We've got our folks from Pittsburgh here in the audience, so I figure it's a good opportunity to give them a shout out. But we launched a project with the city of Pittsburgh during the pandemic after they saw a pretty dramatic shift in how their curbs were being used. It went from a lot of passenger vehicles to a lot more on-demand delivery, a lot more commercial vehicles, and as a result, they saw a rise in double parking, a rise in congestion in certain areas. And so we worked with the city of Pittsburgh to deploy smart loading zones where we would deploy cameras that automated payment and data collection to basically charge vehicles at the curb like a toll road and charge companies like Amazon or DoorDash or whoever for parking to generate revenue. And then in turn, we've helped reduce double parking by about 30% and increase turnover pretty meaningfully. And as another result, because the city of Pittsburgh is so forward-leaning, they were able to secure a $4 million Department of Energy grant to scale up the project and add incentive and disincentive structures to help accelerate mode shift, to further reduce emissions and charge different rate structures to different types of vehicles. And so we're really excited to be working with them and a number of other great cities, but a lot of great work still to be done, but certainly some good blueprints so far.
Good pitch. Ali, so as a layperson, you might have actually the most interesting insight. Like, just you do things besides think about curbs. What's an interesting project that you've seen? The way a normal person might see the curb.
I'm normal too. No, I was going to go back to the case study thing real quick and share a little outside the curb, but we have a joint case study with Miovision and with a lot of other partners, City of Detroit, where they had, I think, over 800 intersections. I might have my numbers wrong, intersections that were unconnected, and it was pure connectivity, right? So that's where Miovision leverages AWS infrastructure, our IoT core services, and they were able to just, at the layer one, just connect those traffic intersections, and that alone was hugely impactful for the staff, because the IT staff, I think, was on like 20, 50 people that were managing the entire intersection, and every time an intersection would go out, it would take them an 8-hour round trip just to have someone go out, figure out what the issue is, send another truck out there, get it repaired, and finally do that cycle. And can you imagine the impact on the traffic while that thing is being repaired, right? So that got reduced down to like 2 hours, and then just being able to connect it and get connectivity out there. Now they're looking at things like machine learning and intelligence at the edge to understand what other capabilities can we introduce at the intersection, which we'd never had just because we never connected it. So really impactful for the cities.
It sounds like Ali's drinking the curb Kool-Aid.
Love it.
Tom? Just on the last piece, I think it's a really exciting time of technology, because we can put so much edge compute processing capability there. We can define everything in software now. And that's really the exciting part of this, because things like, we know connected vehicles are coming. Some of us have contemplated that in our architectures. Some agencies have deployed it. They're coming. But these deep insights about, where do I have safety issues? This is every single agency sitting here has these issues. I'll also put out there too, there's funding available for that, to start getting technology to understand what's going on. So I think future-proofing, we've got the tools now, and please consider cloud computing as part of your future, because it's here, and this is the ability to move into the future.
Tom, you hinted at something earlier that I think is actually important, speaking about sort of pedestrian fatalities and injuries. So how do these sort of systems fit into cities' larger Vision Zero goals, where we've frankly sort of fallen short?
I don't think the goals have fallen short. I think actually having tools to make the changes have fallen short, because no one wants pedestrian injuries. Nobody wants fatalities. So very simple things, and I say it's simple, it looks all magic, but getting full situational awareness at the intersections and crosswalks and even hawks that they have. They've got the mid-block crossings in Arizona and several other states. So being able to get full situational awareness supports everything that we're doing, from parking to understanding how pedestrians move, what the potential conflict is with near-miss identifications. That's also a big area where am I having problems? Put countermeasures in place that are active. That might be a traffic flow countermeasure. It might be a green time extension for pedestrians or disabled pedestrians or bicyclists using a pathway. And that lets them take their policies and enact it and actually have it work in real time.
Kyle, similar question. Have you guys seen a Miovision project particularly help a city with pedestrian safety?
I couldn't agree with Tom more. The baseline is to define where those pockets are in your city of highest collision, highest dangerous locations, right? And it's not just crash data. It's an array of different data. So where are red lights being most commonly ran? Where are pedestrians not getting enough green time to get through that intersection, right? That bench of data allows cities to then allocate specific resources, right? For instance, red light running data. And there's a fine line between it benefiting the citizen versus benefiting the tax dollars and monetizing the intersection, right? So an example that Miovision does is we understand red light running data, but we don't ticket vehicles for red light running, but we give that data to the police so they can allocate resources to specific zones in their network to then find red light runners, right? So that's the data set that we're trying to unlock. We're trying to define where these zones are, and then it gets into the next level of near-miss, conflict analysis, and really diving deep with data to understand what changes need to be made in the network.
One other thing we've really seen in the last few years as an emerging source of pedestrian conflict is double parking, misbehaving delivery vehicles. So, Jordan, is that something that when Automotus goes to a city, you also really look at as you do an installation?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges is, again, a lack of data in a lot of cities. I mean, these guys are the experts here around a lot of near misses and generally just safety hazards that you see in city from a data perspective. And that's certainly something that we look at as well, and that we work with cities to try to get a baseline on and measure against. But it's a tough problem. I mean, it really requires political will, as you all know, to change it, and getting the votes to slow speed limits or add bike lanes or whatever it may be. It's data certainly helps, but it also helps to have that high level support that I'm sure many of you do and some wish you had more of.
One thing I was going to say is I think it also depends on where and how you're collecting data from, right? So, I mean, a lot of times if you're looking at some sort of a intersection, a specific intersection you're trying to solve, all right, this is where the accident took place, let's just look over there. That might not be the only reason or place where that action originated, right? Sometimes it's important to look at an array of intersections or see where that traffic was coming from. Something maybe 2 intersections behind caused a bottleneck, like double parking or something like that caused someone to speed and come over here. So maybe you make an impact 3 intersections away that has a result over here. So it's kind of important. It goes back to that collaboration piece, right? Collaborating across all the different solution vendors, collaborating across data to get a more holistic picture of where is this problem really starting from? Maybe it wasn't at this intersection at all. The accident might have been here, but the issue might have been elsewhere.
I just want to make one last point that comes kind of back to full circle of what I was talking about earlier, is giving agencies insights. Most public agencies don't have data scientists. They don't have academic groups that can study traffic forever and the impact of different activities and countermeasures applied through the city. So I implore all my fellow vendors as well as develop insight tools so you can actually empower agencies to make differences. And we've got the technology that we can do that now, so it comes back to, it's not really a technology issue. When you're making decisions about how I'm going to upgrade my infrastructure, specifically for parking or traffic, what are the benefits I have now? How does it benefit me from a planning and a safety standpoint, and how am I future-proofed?
So we only have a few minutes left, so my sort of final question for everyone is, why don't you give us a parting thought on the future of the curb with about 45 seconds per person, so starting with Kyle.
I will say that connected networks and big data will allow your agency to be proactive versus reactive.
You had 10 more seconds.
That was actually very well put. Yeah, I would second that. I think data alone is useless, right? We all know that. Collecting data might be fun, but if it doesn't offer insights and outcomes, I think it's pointless. So I think it's, having the entire stream of not just collecting the data, but having a strategy on how you visualize it, get insights, and create outcomes, I think that would be the most important thing.
The world is full of empty dashboards that no one looks at because it's just data without a story.
Exactly.
Tom, final thoughts.
I think be ready for the unknown, because we're going to have robotic delivery vehicles, robotic dogs, robotic kids playing with robotic dogs. But we know connected vehicles are coming. We know we have safety issues, and acquire technologies that are future-proofed and give you the ability to add things that we don't know are coming in 10 years from now.
One of us on the stage is a robot, so afterwards tell us who. Jordan, final thoughts.
I would just echo what Tom said. I mean, everything's changing pretty rapidly over here, and so trying to keep your finger on the pulse and being ready for what's around the corner. And from what we've seen, too, just automating as much as you can is super valuable. And then just listening to your constituents. That's it.
I don't think we have to tell you guys that, but it sounds like the future of the curb is bright, and no one knows it more than all of you. So thank you to everyone for having this great conversation today, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.